So we're back with the Jesus Revolution, or the revolt against Jesus. Now, the Jesus Revolution had basically four main players or characters. And the first one is Chuck Smith, who's an apostate pastor who has gone astray from the holy word of God, who has departed for doctrines of demons. 1 Timothy 4:1. But the Spirit expressly speaketh, clearly says that in the latter times, now when Jesus ascended into heaven, that began the latter times. Some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of demons. Now, spirits seduce people into falsehood. Never mind anything regarding sexuality. Let's just talk about falsehood. Spirits, evil, foul spirits, seduce people to falsehood. And then they teach them things that are not true and try to convince them that they are true. This is what happened to Chuck Smith. Now, I'm not sure that you will abide by this and necessarily accept it, but I'm going to play to you from John Todd, who claimed to be from top-level sources in the occult. And in about 1978, he is saying that he literally put in the hand of Chuck Smith a very large check to start a false church. Now, it makes a lot of sense to me. Again, you may not buy the source, but the idea is that it was more than just happened. It was made to happen and backed up by some very wealthy people who wanted to destroy the traditional church. So let's listen in on this talk with John Todd.
Council of 33, the second highest council within the Illuminati, can run an organization that exposes the Illuminati. It just doesn't make sense. And the other strongest thing, we'll let that one go. That's a little too strong for anybody around here. But all I can say is that the Birch Society is like the Masons. Now, I'm going to hit another group here. You're not going to like it. We've got some people here, but hear me out before you all want to lynch me at one time. It's like the Charismatics. And that's because the people, the little people, it's just like, okay, like the coal miners, and like the farmer strike, and like the Teamsters. You've got the people in it below who do not know who its leaders are. Okay? Now, where I sat, I had to hand money to people. Okay? And when I come out, people wonder, why are you mad at these people? These people are good men of God. Why are you mad at them? How would you feel if you had to take millions of dollars in checks and currency and dispose it to these people to do things for the Illuminati? Would you respect them as Christians? That's the idea. Too much money went into the Birch Society from the Illuminati for me to believe that it's an instrument against the Illuminati. Okay? I saw $35 million in 2 years go into the charismatic movement to build the 4 biggest churches in the United States that lead it, plus the full gospel businessmen. I saw $20 million given to Demos Securian one night. I can't accept it. Okay? I'm not I wasn't going to give it, but I'm going to go ahead and give it. Some of its biggest people, like the man you mentioned and Gary Allen, have both stood up and just literally ripped by name the Baptist Fundamental Church apart. And have you ever seen the Blue Book of the Birch Society? No Christian can read that book and say that book is a Christian book. All right? And I've heard them stand up and say they're fools in the fundamental church. Okay? No, I cannot. And anyway, so let's pass over that one. I hit that, and I also hit a dozen other things all at once. I'm going to get lynched by 3 different groups before I get out of here.
That's right. Let me interject something, please.
Yeah.
Let's hold our questions to one per person.
Yeah, really.
We've got about 400 folks in here
And
tonight.
everybody wants to ask me questions. After what I just said about the charismatics, I know they're going to want to.
So let's limit them just a little bit.
What's a charismatic? Okay. A charismatic, let's put it this way, a charismatic movement, the charismatic movement to the outside people is the movement that declares the speaking of tongues. Okay? That is separate from the Pentecostal denominations and churches. Most people do not realize that the Pentecostal churches are not part of the charismatic movement. In fact, many of them oppose it. Alright? The charismatic movement in reality was one of 3 steps declared back in 1964 to do 2 things, while the main function was to destroy the fundamental church of any type. Alright? The Masons was one, and the charismatic church was another, okay? And then the political maneuvers was the third. Now, most people, they get caught up in the charismatic movement, they don't stand back and watch it. It has 2 distinct signs wherever it goes. If it isn't a fundamental church, it splits it every time. I've never seen any fundamental evangelical church say the same after it came there. And the other thing it does is it unites all the liberal churches. It has brought the Catholics, the Lutherans, and the Mormons, even the Mormons, the Methodists, the Episcopalians, Presbyterians, everybody together. Now, I'm going to make some quotations. See, I'm not a charismatic, I admit it, but I'm not a Baptist either, so don't say I'm saying it because I'm a Baptist. I'm against it. I'm against it for one reason. I was on the Council of 13 and had to pay too many millions of dollars out to that organization to accept that it be of God and its leaders, since I know most of its leaders by first name basis. They used the charismatic movement to establish Jesus Rock. I had to deliver a $4 million check that was the second $4 million check that Chuck Smith, that created Calvary Chapel and Maranatha Productions, received from the Illuminati. And he knew it was Illuminati money before you go out of here and say that he didn't. The purpose of it was to build Maranatha Industries and Productions, which started Jesus Rock. Back when the Christian church was preaching against rock music, not knowing why, but preaching against it just the same, and throwing it out the churches, that scared the Illuminati and the occult world to death. At that time, they almost thought their end had come. Because if that really happened within the Christian church would have the biggest mass revival of souls in the United States that this world has ever seen. That's the purpose for rock music, to make sure that that never takes place. Now, okay, let me finish all this, because it's long, before any hands come rushing up. When that took place, they got scared. So they got smart. They thought, and they built Jesus Rock. And you can take some of the top Jesus Rock songs, and you can play the same rock songs over here, and it's the very same tune with new words stuck in. Now I want to give you a key that witches know about. Okay? The sign of the devil's music, as they say of Lucifer's music, is not the words. It's the music. The power is in the music. The sign of Christian music is not the music. It's the words. That's why one song written by a group will catch on and will bless Christians' hearts, and others won't. Have you ever wondered why the Gaithers are the #1 group in the United States? It's not because they sing great. It's because the songs they write and the power in those songs.
Okay, so back to Chuck Smith. You heard him say that he handed a check to him for about $4 million. And you also heard him say about Jesus Rock now replacing the church hymns. And I believe that was dated 1978. Now, many people will not accept this. They want to think it just happened, but it was made to happen. So let's go to key player number 2, Lonnie Frisbee, who's a demonized man, and many demonic manifestations occur in his ministry, such as the Afterglow Room. That's where a lot of people were falling down, shaking. And it was kept away from the public because it was called the Afterglow Room. Impartation of demonic spirits. Now, Greg Laurie was basically a disciple of Lonnie Frisbee. So what more is there to say if he's following Lonnie Frisbee? Now, the fourth one is Chuck Girard. And Chuck Girard becomes one of the leading musicians. I spilled some water on my sheet here, so you have to forgive me. But it's from page 129. The best known of these groups was Love Song. They started a group of guys who had been playing music together and separately since the 1960s. Chuck Girard, Jay Trox, Fred Field. They played a lot of clubs, enjoyed some mainstream success, and had gotten disillusioned by the materialistic world. They embraced a new spiritual quest. They read in the book of Revelation about the New Jerusalem, and someone had the idea that Hawaii was absolutely where this was going to happen. So they lived in caves there, ate fruit, and ingested a lot of mushrooms. But eventually they got tired of waiting for the new millennium, and they came back to the mainland and formed a new band called Love Song. And they played in clubs, preaching peace, love, and LSD as a path to God. Now there's more. I apologize, I spilled some water on my handout. This is page 129. Still on their search for truth, Chuck Girard and his buddies would regularly pick up hitchhikers. And everybody did then. The usual pattern had been that the guys they'd pick up might share some weed or LSD as an expression of thanks. Now, interestingly, the hitchhikers were sharing something else. They'd tell Chuck about how Jesus was better than any drug. And there was a hippie preacher they should go hear at a church called Calvary Chapel. Well, that's page 129. So even the music is now greatly a part of this. And again, the purpose of the music was to substitute for the well-known church hymns that were based on sound doctrine. So traditional hymns were centered in sound doctrine. Contemporary music isn't. Traditional hymns were centered in the cross. You don't really hear the cross mentioned in all of these love songs. Traditional music in church life was centered in rebuking sin and promoting holiness. The more contemporary is on good feelings, and obscuring the name of God, calling God you, and some songs and some lyrics actually were based even in the world or the occult. But everything seems to be based on rock music. Now if you go to Ezekiel 28 verses 13 and 14, you'll find out that Lucifer was in charge of worship in heaven. The traditional interpretation of Ezekiel 28:13 is that musical instruments, the tabrets and pipes. Some say it was just the settings for the stones, but that's not as common as the musical instruments. Some scriptures to back up that interpretation: Amos 6:5, and some New Testament ones there. And that's the text we're looking at, Ezekiel 28:13. That in other words, in heaven, he was a master musician. And what is it that attracts people now to the so-called contemporary worship? Music. Now there's a little bit of a flaw in all of this, and that is that there is no such thing as contemporary music. There is no such thing as contemporary worship. Greg told how Chuck Girard had opened the doors for what became contemporary Christian music and worship. Chapter 25, page 224. But before the Jesus Revolution, that is Calvary Chapel, Chuck Smith, Lonnie Frisbee, and Greg Laurie, and Chuck Girard, worship was just worship. But what it did was it divided worship into traditional and contemporary, which traditional now is phasing out almost completely. Contemporary is coming in almost everywhere. But the real, it's a false dichotomy. But the real issue is it true worship or false worship? And you can go to Isaiah 1:13, Matthew 15:8-9. Thank you for watching this video. End of video.